Good evening. Last time I recorded a video, I discussed racism, and this week I want to discuss a similar subject. Last time it was racism against minority, blacks in particular, and this time I want to talk about some negative attitudes towards white people. I have a friend, him and I joke around a lot, and he sent me a link to a news article about a Baylor University student who had been charged with sexual assault for drugging and raping another student. And the outrage of the story is the fact that he was fined about $400, but would receive no jail time and would be allowed to graduate. And so my friend was making a big deal and showing me yet another example of how the white man has power and influence and privilege in this country. And it's not necessarily that they are favored over the minorities. He and I are minorities, and so we chuckle about this sort of thing. We don't get angry at the white man, but we do recognize that there is some, treatment that isn't really equal in the justice system. But I don't think it's because of any bigotry towards minorities. It just so happens that oftentimes white people can afford, the best of lawyers, and a lot of times minorities are, have low income and can't afford the best defense money can buy. So anyway, I told him, it's not just, the fact that somebody is white or that they have money, but I also said that someone's appearance also plays a role in how they are treated. And I did a little research to back up what I was telling him, and I found my gut instinct about this to actually be true. There's been a lot of articles written on the fact that people who are attractive and commit crimes on average serve 2 years less in prison. So I was telling my friend that if you're ugly, you're going to go to jail longer just because you're ugly. And something, again, that we laughed about, but, I tell you, I've watched a lot of true crime documentaries on Investigation Discovery. I love that channel. I'm sure I told you before, I could watch it all day long. There's actually even a show on there called Handsome Devils, I think. It's on Investigation Discovery. I think there's a TV series with that name. And you'll notice a lot of times they use attractive actors and actresses to reenact these crimes. And sometimes even the real perpetrators themselves are actually attractive in their own right. And so I've compiled a list of some of the criminals that I find to be absolutely drop dead gorgeous, or at least on the attractive side. And, part of the article that I read about that says that people get 2 years more in prison for being ugly said that there's 2 different types of jurors, and during voir dire, which is like the whole selection process where attorneys get to interview jurors and, either include some when impaneling the trial, the jury, or exclude them. They find out if the person, I mean, they don't come right out and ask them the question, but based on the answers, they can figure out if this jurist is going to be either either an emotional person or a rational person. And how does that affect the trial? How does the facts of the case affect the juror? Well, the way a person looks, you know, say for example, you see a brown-skinned person as the defendant, you're going to, you know, or their last name is Garcia or Rodriguez or, you know, or Torres or something like that. You automatically are like, okay, this person is Hispanic, and it, you know, if you have some, you know, prejudices, you may automatically assume that that person is more predisposed to committing a particular crime because they're a minority. And also, you know, their attractiveness also comes into play. If the juror finds the person attractive, they're going to want to cut them some slack. And I'm telling you, I am would be more of a rational juror. I would just want to hear the facts and base my decision on the facts alone. But I got to tell you, that is, I mean, I got to think this through, because when I watch those documentaries and when I've watched some of these, you know, bits and pieces of trials and heard about these attractive criminals in the news, I kind of rooted for them. You know, I wanted to believe, I didn't want to believe that they were culpable for the crimes that they were accused of based on the way they look. But when it comes right down to it, you know, I want to see justice for the victims and their families, regardless of how a person looks. It really shouldn't matter. So anyway, I put together a few people that I can recall seeing in the news being accused of crimes and thinking, oh my God, don't let it be true that they did this. This person's just too absolutely beautiful to have committed this crime. You know, I could only recall 3, but in my research, I actually came up with a couple of other criminals that I was like, oh my God, wow. So let me go ahead and show them to you now, and then you let me know what you think of them. Okay, now the first one is Andrew Cunanan. He was Filipino, and he was accused, or actually he was guilty of having killed Gianni Versace. There was never a trial. The guy shot himself to death, and he was a bit of a chameleon. I mean, there was, you know, in every picture that was compiled of him, and there was just a few, he looked quite different in each picture. There was, back in '97, around that time, I was wearing glasses religiously, and in the pictures that he was wearing glasses, you know, he looked like me. People were calling me Cunanan, which was awful. But anyway, very attractive man. So he makes my list of people that I would hate to feel sympathy for, but that I would, just based on the way he looks. All right, so the next one is Joran van der Sloot. Joran van der Sloot, I think is his name. He is Dutch. He, in 2005, was accused of killing Natalie Holloway. And I don't think her body was ever found, and it was never proven. But Joran van der Sloot would go on to beat a woman to death with a tennis racket, of all things, I believe in Peru. All right, and this is just a mugshot of him. again, adorable, and that's just a mugshot. There's actually even better pictures of him online, but I wanted to use, pictures that are, free to share. So that's during Vandersloot. All right, here's a recent favorite of mine. In 2016, Oscar Pistorius, also known as the Blade Runner, was convicted of murder. He's known as the Blade Runner because his feet were amputated, but he went on to be, I don't know if he ever competed in the Olympics, but he is a runner. And, just beautiful guy. And, it's, you can't overlook what he did. Supposedly he heard, what he thought was a prowler. He got up in the night and he thought the prowler was in the bathroom. He shot through the door. His girlfriend was on the other side of the door and she ended up being shot to death. Very odd story. But that is the story in a nutshell of Oscar Pistorius. Absolutely beautiful man. I don't know how much time he's doing in prison, but he has been put in jail for his crimes. So, this is absolutely a very shallow subject. I think it's okay to do once in a while. Unfortunately, when people are attractive, they are afforded a lot more, benefits that would be afforded to the common Joe, the average Joe. So, it's okay to have these conversations once in a while about things that are completely meaningless, and certainly the way a criminal looks is absolutely meaningless. As they say, at the end of the day, all that really matters is the crimes they committed, and they deserve, whatever they are, sentenced to, whether it be death or life in prison. They deserve every bit of it. So as always, I want to thank you for listening, watching, and agreeing. Until we meet again.
In the video, I discussed 3 criminals. They appeared in the left-hand column of the Brutal Bunch image. Not discussed, but in the image center top is Jeffrey Dahmer, whose crimes were too sickening and disgusting to discuss. In the middle is Kyle and Eric Menendez, who killed their parents for money. Center bottom is Scott Peterson, who killed his pregnant wife. Upper right is Paul Bernardo, a Canadian serial killer. Center middle is Tiago Gomez, a Brazilian serial killer. And bottom right is Charles Schmidt, the Pied Piper of Tucson.